The most expensive object in your living room is a lie. You paid for it. You arranged your entire life around it. And in a few years, it will be worth less than the cardboard box it shipped in. Because right now, inside a laboratory on the other side of the world, a machine is running that's about to make every flat screen on Earth, including the one you're staring at, completely obsolete. And here's the part they don't want you to know. The trillion-dollar companies that sold you that screen already know it. They've known for years, and they're terrified. This isn't a rumor. It's not a concept video. It's a working machine. And before this video ends, I'm going to show you exactly what it does, exactly how it works, and exactly why it's about to turn the biggest industry on the planet upside down. Stay to the end, because the final part is the one that changes how you see everything you own. Let's start with the truth about what's hanging on your wall. Maybe it's a massive 4K television. Maybe it's a sleek, ultra-thin OLED panel that cost you a month of rent. It feels like the absolute peak of modern technology. But here's the uncomfortable fact. You are staring at a 100-year-old optical illusion. For a century, every major leap in entertainment technology has essentially been a lie. Back in the 1920s, the first cathode ray tubes trapped light behind a thick wall of glass. Over the decades, we made that glass thinner. We made the box lighter. We packed millions of tiny glowing pixels so close together that your brain is tricked into seeing a high-definition image. But the fundamental physics of your television have not changed since your grandparents bought their first black and white set. You are still just sitting on a couch, staring at a flat, two-dimensional wall, letting your eyes be tricked by trapped light. It's an evolutionary dead end. If you're enjoying this, hit the like button. It genuinely helps these videos reach more people. And subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because what comes next is the part that breaks everything. Right now, inside a laboratory in China, a team of engineers is operating a machine that proves the era of the flat screen is completely over. They didn't build a better television. They didn't build a thinner panel or a sharper pixel. They built a true free space volumetric display. In plain English, they built a real, physical, three-dimensional hologram that floats in the open air. This is not a parlor trick. It's not a reflection made with hidden projectors and a pane of glass, the kind of illusion you see at a theme park or a Las Vegas concert. This is actual light, stopped and shaped in the middle of a room. You can walk entirely around it. You can view it from any angle. No bulky VR headset, no looking through glass. If you think holograms are science fiction, you need to understand what's happening right now. Because if this technology works at global scale, that expensive flat screen on your wall is about to become as outdated as a horse and buggy. We've spent 100 years trapped behind glass. The glass is about to shatter. For the last decade, the smartest engineers in Silicon Valley knew the flat screen was hitting its ceiling. Companies like Apple, Meta, and Google looked at the television and the smartphone and realized they were running out of ways to make a piece of glass exciting. Their solution was supposed to be the next leap in human history. They spent tens of billions of dollars on it. But their solution was fundamentally flawed from the very beginning. They built virtual reality and augmented reality headsets. They took the flat screen, shrank it down to the size of a postage stamp, and strapped it directly to your face. Look at devices like the Apple Vision Pro or the Meta Quest. They're undeniably brilliant pieces of engineering, enormous computing power packed into a small space. But they don't solve the actual problem of the flat screen. They just hide it. Think about looking out a window at a mountain. A television is like looking through that window from across the room. A VR headset is like taping that same window directly to your eyeballs. No matter how close you get, you're still looking at a flat digital image being pushed into your optic nerve. You're not interacting with a physical object in the space around you. You're just wearing the window. And there's a much bigger problem. Headsets isolate you from reality. When you put a heavy piece of plastic and metal over your eyes, you leave the physical world behind. You can't make eye contact with your spouse sitting on the same couch. You can't easily share a physical object resting on a table. You're closed off, living inside a private, walled-off simulation. Silicon Valley has spent a fortune trying to convince American consumers that this blindfolded isolation is the inevitable future of entertainment and work. But it's not working. Buyers try these heavy headsets for a few weeks, get tired of the weight and the isolation, and leave them in a closet. Human beings simply do not want to be cut off from their own living rooms. True three-dimensional experience doesn't mean putting a screen closer to your eyes. It means bringing the digital object into the physical room with you. It means creating light that exists in the open air, exactly like a lamp or a chair. And while American tech giants were spending fortunes trying to figure out how to make wearable screens lighter, a group of physicists halfway across the world decided to stop playing the game entirely. They asked a very simple question. What if we throw the glass away completely? That's the end of part 1. Part 2 is where it gets wild. I'm going to show you exactly how these engineers trap light in empty air, break the physics that has held screens hostage for a century, and turn nothing into something you can walk around. Keep watching. To build a real hologram, you have to break a fundamental habit of engineering. For a century, television makers treated light as something you trap against a flat surface. The researchers in China realized that to move forward, they had to stop treating light like paint on a canvas and start treating it like clay in the physical world. They shifted their focus to a technology called a free space volumetric display. To understand how radical this is, think about how a normal screen works. Your television is made up of millions of flat squares called pixels. When they change color, your eye is tricked into seeing a moving picture. But a volumetric display doesn't use pixels. It uses something called a voxel. A voxel is a three-dimensional pixel. It doesn't exist on a flat piece of glass. It exists at a specific physical coordinate floating in the empty air. The problem with building a voxel has always been the basic nature of light. Shine a flashlight into a dark room, and the beam travels in a straight line until it hits a wall, a piece of dust, or your hand. Light does not just stop in the middle of the air and hover. It needs a physical surface to bounce off so your eye can see it. That's why we've always needed screens. The screen is the surface that catches the light. To create a true hologram, you have to find a way to stop light in the middle of a room, without a screen, without a wall, and without a headset. You have to give the light a physical anchor in thin air. That is exactly what the Chinese engineering teams have managed to do. They found a way to manipulate the air itself to catch the light. Instead of shining a projector at a piece of glass, they use invisible forces to create a tiny, microscopic physical point floating in the room. Then they hit that exact floating point with a laser. When the laser hits it, that tiny point lights up. It becomes a glowing voxel. Create one voxel and you have a tiny floating dot of light. But create millions of these floating dots and arrange them perfectly in three-dimensional space. And you don't just have a picture, you have a physical shape. A glowing, moving object sitting right in front of you on your coffee table. You can walk a full circle around it. If it's a rendering of an apple, you see the front of the apple from the couch and the back of the apple from the kitchen. It is physically occupying the space in your room. Saying they trapped light in mid-air sounds like magic. But it's not magic. It's incredibly precise physics. And the actual science of how they grab the air to make this happen is surprisingly simple once you understand the trick. How do you stop light in empty space? You don't. Instead, you give the light something to hit. The researchers use a technique involving invisible lasers and a single microscopic particle of matter. Think of a tiny speck of dust floating in a sunbeam inside your living room. Normally, gravity pulls that speck down, or a breeze blows it away. But engineers use focused invisible laser beams to trap that speck. The lasers push against the particle from different directions, acting like a pair of invisible tweezers, holding the tiny particle perfectly still in the middle of the air. This is called an optical trap. Once the particle is trapped, they shoot it with a second set of red, green, and blue lasers. The speck lights up. It becomes a single glowing pixel hovering in your room. But one pixel is useless. Here's where the brilliant trick happens. Think about standing outside on the 4th of July holding a glowing sparkler. If you hold your hand perfectly still, it's just a single dot of light. But if you spin your arm really fast in a circle, Your eyes see a solid ring of fire glowing in the dark. Your brain connects the dots. Because the sparkler is moving faster than your eyes can process, you see a continuous shape. The volumetric display does the exact same thing, but at speeds that are hard to comprehend. The invisible laser tweezers move that single glowing speck around the room millions of times per second. It flies through the air, tracing the outline of a spinning car, a human face, or a football hovering over your table. Because the particle is moving incredibly fast and human eyes are relatively slow, you don't see a single dot zooming around. Your brain blends it all together. You see a solid, glowing, three-dimensional shape standing completely still in the open air. Some laboratories are even doing this without the speck of dust. They use highly focused lasers to literally zap a microscopic point of air for a fraction of a second, creating a tiny spark of glowing plasma. Then they draw shapes with that spark. It's just light, speed, and timing. No magic glass, no mirror trick, no bulky headset. They have turned the empty air inside a room into a screen. The physics are proven, the machines are real, the laboratory phase is succeeding, and that brings us to the real problem. Because when a piece of science fiction becomes an engineering reality, the companies that built their empires on the old technology have to face a terrifying truth. And here's the thing, this is where most videos end. They show you the cool hologram, you say wow, and you move on. But the story doesn't end in the lab. It ends in your living room. And the part nobody is talking about is what this does to the most valuable companies on Earth, and how soon this actually lands in your hands. That's part 3. Keep watching. Think about the most valuable companies on the planet right now. Apple, Samsung, LG, Google. Their entire empires are built on a single fragile foundation, the flat screen. Apple is a multi-trillion-dollar company primarily because it sells you expensive pieces of glass that you put in your pocket, sit on your desk, or strap to your wrist. Samsung makes billions manufacturing the actual display panels that go inside those devices and the televisions in your home. The global tech economy is a massive supply chain dedicated to cutting, polishing, and shipping flat glass. But what happens to that supply chain when the glass is no longer necessary? If free space volumetric displays replace traditional screens, the business models of these American and South Korean giants will face a devastating threat. Imagine the next version of a smartphone. It might not be a flat rectangle at all. It could be a small, durable cylinder you carry in your pocket. When you want to watch a video or take a video call, you set it on a table, and the image projects directly into the air in front of you. No screen to crack. No heavy glass panel to manufacture. If China holds the foundational patents and the manufacturing capability for this new technology, the balance of global tech power shifts overnight. Whoever controls the hardware for the next human interface will control the next century of consumer electronics. Right now, American companies are desperately trying to defend the era of screens. That's exactly why Apple and Meta are pouring billions of dollars into virtual reality headsets. They're trying to keep you looking at glass panels, even if they have to strap them to your face. They're defending their existing supply chains. Meanwhile, Chinese engineers are actively building the post-glass era. They're not trying to sell you a heavier screen. They're trying to make the screen completely obsolete. If they succeed, the American tech industry will be caught totally off guard, stuck holding warehouses full of outdated headsets, while the rest of the world moves on to free space holograms. And the ripple effects go far beyond Apple and Meta. Think of Corning, the American company that makes Gorilla Glass for almost every smartphone. Think of the thousands of software developers who design apps specifically for flat, two-dimensional swiping. A shift to true 3D interfaces means every operating system and every piece of hardware has to be completely redesigned from the ground up. The strategic stakes are massive. But before you throw your television in the trash, there's something you need to know. Moving from a brilliant breakthrough in a controlled laboratory to a consumer product you can actually buy at Best Buy is never a simple process. Let me be completely honest about where this technology stands right now. What the engineering teams in China have built is a laboratory breakthrough, not a finished consumer product. You can't go online and order a free space volumetric display for your living room today. To understand why, You have to look at the sheer amount of power this machine requires. Remember the microscopic particle moving millions of times a second to draw a physical shape in the air? Tracking and pushing that tiny speck requires incredibly complex algorithms. The invisible lasers have to adjust their focus instantly. If the timing is off by even a fraction of a millisecond, the illusion falls apart and the hologram simply disappears. Running those precise calculations requires massive computing power. Right now, the hardware needed to process that math is bulky. The lasers require serious electricity. The cooling systems needed to keep the equipment from melting are loud. If you look at the current prototypes, they're not sleek little devices. They look like heavy industrial machinery surrounded by thick cables and humming servers. But this is exactly how every major technological shift begins. Think back to the 1960s. The first computers were the size of entire rooms. They required massive air conditioning units to stay cool. They cost millions of dollars, and they were only used by top government scientists and military engineers. Nobody looked at those giant, loud machines and thought they would one day shrink down to fit inside a pocket. But they did. The first mobile phones were the size of a brick and cost thousands of dollars. The first flat-screen televisions were heavy, incredibly expensive, and prone to breaking. Technology always starts loud, expensive, and clunky. Then engineers go to work. Over the next decade, the processors will get faster, the lasers will shrink, the power requirements will drop. The massive cooling fans will be replaced by silent thermal management. The wall between this laboratory breakthrough and your living room hasn't disappeared. It's just been moved a few years down the calendar. The hardest part, the basic physics of trapping light in empty space, has already been solved. It's only a matter of time before these machines are small enough and cheap enough to manufacture at global scale. And when that day arrives, your house will never be the same. Imagine walking into your living room 10 years from now. You sit down on your couch, but you don't point a remote at a giant black rectangle on the wall. Instead, a small device on your coffee table quietly powers on. You want to watch a professional football game. Suddenly, a miniature field materializes in the empty air right in front of you. The players are physically glowing in three-dimensional space. If you want to see a controversial catch, you don't wait for a television producer to change camera angles. You simply lean forward and look around the defender yourself. You're observing the actual volume of the game happening in real time, right inside your house. Think about how you communicate today. Taking a video call means staring at a flat, awkward grid of faces on a computer monitor. With a volumetric display, the person you're talking to simply appears in the chair across from you. You can read their actual physical body language. You can make real eye contact. The distance between cities completely vanishes. The impact goes far beyond simple entertainment. Imagine a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. Instead of looking at a flat X-ray on a monitor, a perfect, beating hologram of the patient's heart hovers over a desk. The doctor can walk entirely around it, spotting physical problems that a flat image would hide. Imagine an American auto engineer shaping a new car design with their bare hands in the middle of a conference room. For the last 100 years, human interior design has been dictated by the screen. We arrange all of our furniture to point at a wall. When the television is turned off, it's just a massive, dead black mirror dominating the room, a giant, heavy piece of glass that does absolutely nothing. This Chinese volumetric display breakthrough threatens to finally kill that black mirror. We are standing at the absolute end of the glass era. Since the 1920s, our relationship with digital reality has been trapped behind a barrier. We look through the window, but we can't reach inside. Now the window is being removed. The digital world is spilling out into the physical world. It's exactly like watching the transition from the telegraph to the telephone. One technology forced you to decode flat signals. The other let you hear a real human voice. We're about to cross that exact same bridge, but for human vision. The companies that realize this first will own the next century. The companies that keep building flat screens will quietly disappear. The flat screen in your living room has had a great run, but technology rarely stands still. It evolves, and the old kings are eventually replaced by something that once sounded completely impossible. The shift from trapped light behind a glass panel to true free-space volumetric holograms is not just a neat trick. It's a fundamental disruption of a trillion-dollar global industry. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of technology and want to see more breakdowns like it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. And here's a question for you. If a consumer version of this Chinese hologram machine arrived at an American electronics store tomorrow, would you finally throw your flat-screen television in the trash? Or are you too attached to staring at the glass? Let me know your answer down in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll pin the best takes for everyone to see.